You're good.
All righty.
Let me just
Hey.
make sure.
Hey, Rick.
Can he hear you?
Can you hear me, Rick?
I can hear you fine.
All righty. Are we on, Carlo?
You're on.
All right. We're actually on. Rick, how are you? I'm Killer Keller.
Hiya, killer.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Fantastic. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you for rescheduling. We had some bad weather last week on the East
Yeah.
Coast.
I heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm glad you survived, anyways.
Oh yeah, we survived. It was we were without power for a while.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, Rick Emmett, I've been watching your career for many years. The beginning of MTV, it was like it was one of the main things I was looking for. Triumph.
Great.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Feel free to ask a question.
Oh no! Well, I just want to get it started with. I want you to know that I've really been paying attention. But you know what? We're gonna ask some questions. And the cool thing is your solo career. You got 11 albums that have just been reissued by Round Hill Records.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. 11 albums in one shot.
Yeah, they actually they made a deal for like 13 of them from me, and one of them was a Christmas record, and I said I don't think you should put that out in July. So they settled on the 11, and yeah, it's great. I mean, I'd never pursued the whole thing of like streaming and digital. I had like I'd sell them off my website. You could download them off my website, but I hadn't really, been aggressive about iTunes and all of that. So they really pursued all of that, and that's great. It was nice to realize that there could be this kind of corporate entity that would be supportive of what I was doing. That was a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you're now on all the streaming sites, whether it be iTunes or
Yeah,
Spotify.
Pandora, Spotify, all of those kinds of things. And I think, there's they probably have some sort of digital aggregators, and I think if you probably, even if you went to my own site, you click on the link and it'll take you probably to wherever Round Hill has their retailers, their digital retailers.
Yeah. Can you get a hard copy as well?
No, they haven't done that yet, and I think my guess is this is like a litmus test, right? They're going to see how does it do, and if there seems to be a genuine interest. I know, I mean, they did all the Triumph catalog, right? So, and I know they've been incredibly sort of aggressive and generous about how they've pursued that. They've put out vinyl. The Triumph Greatest Hits Classics album came out in vinyl. They're talking about doing a box set in early 2021. So I know that they're really chasing it with Triumph. And I mean, I don't know if they're going to necessarily make the same level of commitment to me. My stuff is not exactly as mainstream as the Triumph stuff was. I tended to be kind of an eclectic guy, lots of different styles, jazz and blues and classical, and so I was getting my yayas out, and I wasn't necessarily, doing the kinds of things that the marketplace might go, yeah, this is great, Rick. We love when you play rock. I go, well, this album isn't rock, and then another album I go, well, this one isn't rock either. I mean, I left Triumph in '88 because I was kind of trying to make a transition in my life to be more of a singer-songwriter kind of guy, because that's sort of what came more naturally to me in terms of being creative on my own. I mean, yeah. So, but there is one hard rock record in those 11. There's one called Liberty Manifesto. I had a little thing with a drummer named Mike Schotten, and it was pretty hard rock, pretty progressive. So if that's what somebody's into, then they could find it in the 11. That one's called Liberty Manifesto.
All right. Well, I know even with Triumph though, you had written Suitcase Blues. Was that like a little bit of a taste of what was to come?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing was, I mean, even on the very first Triumph album, I had put there'd been this song called "Blinding Light Show" that I'd written in a band before I was in Triumph, and it had a classical guitar piece in the middle called Moonchild. Again, something that I'd written when I was in college, long time before Triumph. But Triumph was always kind of lean on material when it came to pre-production. We'd show up and we wouldn't necessarily have quite enough to make a full album. And Mike Levine was the producer of Triumph Records in the early days. And Mike would say, "Hey, Rick, could you maybe put a guitar piece on the record?" And a lot of rock bands did that in those days, so it wasn't a tremendous stretch. But so that's where it started, classical guitar pieces. And then Suitcase Blues was kind of like a little bit of a, on the Progressions of Power album, there was a song called Take My Heart. And I remember there were reviews, people wrote like, "This sounds like some sort of, lounge lizard jazz ballad thing. What is it doing on a hard rock record?" But yeah, I guess you could say if I was a pitcher, I was a guy that threw a lot of knuckleballs.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you though, back then the albums, what were they, about 30 minutes long, 32 minutes? So
Yeah, I think the ideal thing of a record was if you could keep it under 20 minutes aside on an album, that was ideal. But it was always a bitch to try and figure out how to sequence a record, because you're always going to have to, end one side and then flip it over and go to the other side. And I don't know how much your listeners know about the cutting and the making of vinyl records, but it was always a bit of a thing where on the early sides of records, like to the outside grooves, that's where you could put heavy duty stuff that had lots of bottom or lots of level, because the grooves could be bigger. But then of course, as you got closer to the middle, the grooves were getting smaller. And that was where you'd always bury the guitar pieces and the quiet things and the ballads, because you didn't have to cut them with quite as much level. It wouldn't, if the bass got too much, it could literally pop the needle right out of the groove, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had to be, when you mastered lacquers, you had to be very conscientious about those kinds of things. Nowadays, CD, you can put, I think, a good 75, 80 minutes of stuff, on a compact disc. I think the max thing for frequency range is something like 72 minutes. But on an album, the max would be 40, and you'd even want to be less than that, like 38 minutes would be ideal.
yeah. When I noticed when people first were going to CD and they were making 78-minute albums, 80-minute albums, it didn't make them better.
No, and plus it made them, obviously audio-wise, you couldn't cut them to, so that they would be extremely hot. And it's a weird thing, I mean, nowadays, because of the digital technology, if you make a playlist and you got lots of modern stuff in there, and then all of a sudden you've got a cut that's, say, from an old, like, I don't know, Machine Head by Deep Purple, right? So you get to that cut and it's quieter, and you go, why is it quieter? And it's because it hasn't been remastered digitally, in order to be able to bump it so that because you can now, there's no noise floor now. You can really max out the signal.
Yep. Yeah. I heard, actually, I've heard Machine Head remastered and remixed. I loved it. They changed a few solos around. You heard the pre-production intro to the songs and the outros.
Yeah. I think when they do the Triumph box set, I think Round Hill is they're gonna want to do some of that stuff, remixes, and for sure they're gonna remaster, but they're gonna look for weird tracks and things that it didn't necessarily make the records in the first place back in the old days. I mean, everybody does it now, But of course, Deep Purple, that's one of my favorites. And my pal Steve Morris, they've just got a new record out, so.
I'm a big fan, and I haven't heard Whoosh yet.
Yeah. Big shout out to those boys. Love that.
Yeah. But, I love them. With, like I was saying, I seen you originally in New Jersey at the Meadowlands Arena. I don't remember. I think you might have been with Loudness and Leslie West's Mountain, if that sounds familiar.
I remember the show. You know why I remember the show?
Yeah.
Leslie came to me backstage. And Leslie's got a voice that's like, it's like way down here, he's like a guy that smokes cigars all the time. And he says, "Hey, Emmett, I got something for you." And he reaches into his pocket and he gives me a present. And it's a knob that like he had a deal with DiMarzio, and DiMarzio had made knobs, and this was back in the day of Spinal Tap, right? And the knobs went to 11, so they were numbered around the outside. And he gives me this, so that's why I remember that show, because I remember Leslie giving me that present. Hey, you know, what a great guy! What a
Yeah,
what a
you know,
character.
funny, Leslie, everybody's got a story when he comes up in our conversations on the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Leslie's a character.
He is indeed.
Yep, yep. He's living in Jersey, I believe.
Is he?
I think so.
Yeah.
He was.
I did a NAMM show when Dean Guitars reissued a Flying V like 20 years after the fact or whatever, and so I went out to California, and Leslie was also a Dean guy, and one of the Shaker brothers too, Rudy was at that show and in the Dean booth. So you know, it was a little bit wild, it was a little bit crazy, it was fun, and at the hotel. You know, Leslie and I hung out and had breakfast together, and so I'd given him my home phone number, and I don't know, like 6 months later, I get a phone call in the middle of one day, and you know, my display says it's Leslie West, and I go, "Hey, Leslie," he goes, "Hey, Rick," he goes, "I'm having a real problem with one of my wisdom teeth. I need to come in," and I go, "Leslie, this is Rick Emmett. Do you need a dentist?" He goes, "Ah, shit, my dentist is named Rick." He goes, "I dialed the wrong number," and he hangs up.
That's phenomenal. I lost your volume just then, Rick.
Oh, did you?
Oh, there you are. There you are. Yeah, yeah. I got it till he hung up the phone.
You know, I'm just sitting here, buddy, and I'm just waiting for you to ask questions. So
All right.
sometimes I just get nice and quiet and I wait.
I got you. And I thought there was a drop. Now, I don't have any rules for this interview. So you seem to be a pretty reserved guy. Now, what was with those pants in those old videos?
Everybody was wearing those pants in those days, buddy. Don't you remember, like, you know, I think even Van Halen, David Lee Roth had a pair of pants that didn't even have an ass in it. Like, come on. Like, those were those days, right? Like, Quiet Riot had striped pants, and, you know, I mean, everybody was wearing those things for a while. And then,
But I thought you guys were like early on.
here in Canada, there was a band called Max Webster, and Kim Mitchell used to come out wearing like a full bodysuit that was like a stretch spandex, you know, Lord knows what it was, something from a science fiction movie or something, you know, like it was the thing. Yeah, my wife and I could go shopping at a woman's workout store because everybody was getting like the Jane Fonda stretch pants and shit. That's what everybody was wearing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, your turn now.
All righty.
New question.
New question. I got you. My favorite bands out of Canada all seem to be three-piece. You got Rush, you got Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, and you have Triumph. And I was thinking about this. I wonder why all the three-piece bands out of Canada became my favorites.
Well, that's more a reflection of you than me. I'm not sure. This is the first time I've met you and talked to you, so I don't know where you're coming from. But I mean, I'm going to guess that obviously Rush set a pretty high standard, and you know, I've said it time and time again. Their coattails were huge, and they opened a lot of doors for us. And so people that liked Rush, they were obviously liking a band that was so good on so many levels. They were great musicians. Neil Peart was a tremendous writer. They made really high quality records. So Rush was a band that had records that were in the league of like Pink Floyd albums and Yes albums, and you know, like the upper echelon of kind of progressive rock and stuff. So consequently, if you were coming along in the wake of them, I think there was already a softening of the marketplace where people would go like, well, you know, hey, another three-piece band from Canada, great. Now, in the case of Mahogany Rush, I'm now going to guess at your taste, and I'm going to guess that you like good guitar players. You know, Alex
Oh,
Langston was a good guitar player. You know,
yeah,
I like
yeah.
to think of myself as a fairly competent guitar player. And Frank Marino is an unbelievably great guitarist, you know, and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
in that Hendrix tradition, but he's, you know, taking it a step further. And yeah, you know, I mean, I think that may be what you're digging.
I'm sure you're right.
There
Yeah,
you
yeah. Frank is well, he's one of my favorites, and you and gee, Alex. But yep, those three pieces. So when you got 11 albums that we just talked about, and two more to come, that's got to be a hundred. That's got to be 110 songs plus
It's
released all at
actually,
once.
yeah, there's more than that actually, Killer, because there's stuff where, like in the original deal that Roundhill made with me, they only wanted stuff where they could also control the publishing. So it had to be stuff that I wrote. But there's a full album of stuff that I did that were cover songs. I did a thing with another guitar player, Dave Dunlop, and we did covers of like Springsteen's "Born to Run" for you boys down in Jersey, and we did a Sting song and a Paul McCartney tune, and so there's a whole album of that. There were three albums that I made with a label called Duke Street, and there was some um, you know, question as to who would own the masters in Canada if, you know, a deal was made. I had the rights for them for foreign territories, but I didn't have the rights for them in Canada, so they weren't included in the Roundhill deal. And yeah, there was one more record too. I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh, I redid all the Triumph hits acoustic. So that album was called Then Again. So you know, they didn't make a deal for that either. So, you know, I've probably been a part of as many as maybe 20 CDs since I left Triumph, which is, yes, it's a lot of stuff. But when you're tallying up how many songs are in my publishing catalog, yeah, if you counted the ones that I've done, what I wrote with outside people, the ones that I did when I was in Triumph, because there was like at least 80 of those. There might have been 80 or 90 of those. And then, yeah, over, you know, so there's probably about 300 songs in my catalog.
Yeah, that's you know you've really been prolific. I didn't even have any idea it was that much.
Yeah,
That's
you know, that's one of the things that I've always tried to be a conscientious writer. Like every day, try to, you know, put something in a notebook, pick up the guitar and fiddle around and come up with something. And I mean, one of the reasons that I left Triumph was that it felt a little confining to me, that I could only create music in one kind of style and that would suit that kind of image and you know, that brand. And so I kind of went, well, you know, if I go out on my own, I'll have a much wider range of things that I can do. And then at a certain point, I didn't care whether or not I was going to make a lot of money selling a lot of records. I really just wanted to, I knew I had enough fans and people that would come to my website that would buy it so that I'd make my money back on the fact that I made it. I'm going out and I'm playing gigs, I'm touring, I'm making a good living, I'm doing fine. And I've got my, you know, airplay royalty stuff from the days in Triumph. So I was doing okay. I wasn't going to become independently wealthy, but as long as I made enough money that I could afford to make another record, I just went ahead and, you know, I kept writing and and I mean, I've retired from the road now, but I have not retired from being creative. I still write every day. I've written a book of poetry and we're going to maybe make a deal and put that out. And I think I'm going to do a memoir. I'm going to write a book that way. Like, I'm a writer. I blog on my website every day. You know, I answer questions and communicate with fans. So, and I think I share that trait with Frank Marino. I think Frank does that on his site a lot. So maybe that's another thing you like about us Canadians, man. Maybe you like the fact that we're very social and we're very gregarious.
Yeah,
Yeah, sense of humor.
I agree. I agree. Hey, a couple years back, you were playing in New Jersey. It seemed like every year in Pompton Lakes, maybe.
Yeah, man.
What?
Exactly.
I could never. That sold out quick. I could never
It
get a
did.
ticket to that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend there, Cam, and he sort of started to do a charity thing because he lost one of his best pals to cancer, and so they were raising money always for a children's kind of cancer treatment therapy kind of charitable thing. So yeah, Cam Mildner, I would go and play with for him every year in April. It was kind of like when I would have to renew my work visa for the United States every year. That was always the first contract that we could always file. We knew we'd start touring again in April. We'd go to Pompton Lakes and yeah, the Housewives of New Jersey, that neighborhood.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was great. It was a great tradition, and we did it for I think about 10 or 11 years running. It was
Yeah, I was wishing that was going to happen again, but you're done with the road.
I think so. I mean, when I initially did it, I just said, okay, I'm going to take a hiatus. I'm going to see how it works, like, and then I told my agent, well, okay, I'll go out if I can drive to a gig, so that I don't have to do airports and I don't have to do border crossings and all that. Then, I'll take a few of those, maybe like little acoustic things, solo things. They do gigs now, where sometimes they interview you for, you know, a half an hour and then you play one song or two songs and then they take a break and then they interview you again for another 20 minutes and then you play another song and that's the show. So I said, okay, I'll do some of those. So they booked them, and then along comes COVID-19, and all of that stuff was canceled. And I said, well, I'm starting to get into this sitting around and you know my it's actually the whole thing of going on a hiatus and then this COVID thing. It's actually been kind of good for my career. I've had a resurgence of people interested in doing these kind of interviews and stuff. So I go, well, okay, maybe I don't even need the road anymore. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had my 67th birthday. I can still play. It's just, can I take the in and out of taxi cabs and in and out of airplanes and in and out of hotels, and like that was the thing that was grinding me down. So like my life had got to the point where my wife would say, hey, let's go on a holiday. And I go, no, I'm sick and tired of going on airplanes and going in and out of hotels. No, I want to sit home. And she'd go, oh, you're so boring.
Yeah. It's like Ian Gillan said, his wife would give him like 1 week to become a house husband again and get to the to-do list.
Yeah.
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 And then he would just
In
go out
my
on Friday.
case, it would probably take me about a month.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I hope you're not done playing permanently alive, because I've never, since the Triumph gig with Leslie West. That's 30
Yeah.
years or more.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm doing one of those Zoom masterclass things for the rock and roll fantasy people later in August, August 27th. And I did a workshop thing online like this where I taught a songwriting thing a couple of weekends back, and I really enjoyed it. So I might, and I'm going to do something in September that's called Six String Salute. That's a fundraiser for like guys that are that would normally be out on the road working on crews and roadies and stage managers and production managers and front of house mixers and all those kind of guys. And so it's going to raise some money for those people. And I'm going to do a version of Fight the Good Fight sitting here in my library for the Zoom. So maybe that's a thing that's pointing towards the future, Keller. Maybe I'll just be doing concerts from my library.
Yeah. But yeah, everybody's hurting right now. I mean, all of our friends are musicians and actors and comedians, and and all the crew.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. It's a weird thing. And I mean, the advice that I would say, the reaction that I have to it all is just, it's almost like you have to sort of try and be very Zen Buddhist about all of this. You have to kind of say, okay, don't get too far out ahead of yourself. Just be here in this day, in this moment, and deal with it. And then when tomorrow comes, we'll deal with that. And we won't get too, like, if you start to regret what you're missing, what you lost from what you knew in the past, that's not a healthy thing. And if you get too anxious about the future, that's not a healthy thing either. So just sort of deal with the present. But it's hard. I mean, and psychologically, I can see, I see it. When you go to the grocery store, you can see people that are they're a little bit freaked out. It's weird that everybody's in masks. It's just weird.
It is. It's very, very strange. If I can take you back, I know you don't like to look back much, right? You're a forward guy, whether it be with your music or, just with taking one day at a time.
Yes.
But when you left Triumph, did that put a strain on your friendship? Because I believe you guys are friends, and
we are now. Not when it happened.
Oh no!
When I left, they did not like me, and it took us years for lawyers to figure out, how it was going to settle out. And then I didn't talk to them for like 20 years.
Oh.
But then in around 2006, my younger brother, who was a huge fan of Triumph and of me, and he was he was stage 3, stage 4. And so we were having a lot of those heart-to-heart kinds of conversations. And at one point he said to me, you got baggage of your own you got to take care of, and I went, oh, come on, man, don't put this back on me. He goes, no, come on, I want you to try and make good with those guys again. So I reached out, and they had reached out, and we did a kind of a Music Hall of Fame thing together. That was the first thing we did. And it was awkward. It was weird. There were, a lot of pink elephants in the room when we were first trying to figure it out. But we got past it. And then we got back to the point where it was like, okay, the past is the past. And as you say, I'm a forward-looking kind of guy. And I said to them, the past is gone, and I'm not going to worry about the past. Let's just deal from here on out. And so it was great. We played a couple of gigs even. We played Sweden and we played Rocklahoma. And that was 2007, I think, 2008. And I've been back in the Metalworks making records, and we hang out now. And of course, we've done all of these other kinds of things, the Walk of Fame and the Juno's Hall of Fame and all of that stuff. So, and now this box set thing is happening, and I'm in the conversation for that too. So it's great. It's really like we were able to get past all the ugly stuff and then just get back to what I like to say in interviews is I lost a brother, but I got a couple of brothers back. So it worked out all right, in the end. And we have an affection for each other. We get together every Christmas and we have a dinner and we have a few drinks and we swap stories. It's good. It's great.
That's very cool. How did you work out? Like, I think that you wrote Suitcase Blues, but Gil Moore sang it.
No, I did.
Oh, that was your vocal? I think.
Yeah, that was my vocal. Gil sang. He did sing a lot of blues cuts, though. If like on the Just a Game album, there was a song. One of my favorite Gil Moore tunes is called "Young Enough to Cry," and it was like an old school kind of minor blues, and Gil sang the crap out of it, like and he had a good voice for that kind of stuff. Yeah, tunes like "Fool for Your Love" and he had a real bluesy kind of approach to singing, and but no, Suitcase Blues. I was on the road, and I would go back to the hotel after gigs, and I would practice and I would write, and in the hotel room till late in the night. And I had a book that was a Joe Pass guitar studies book, and so I was playing some of these chords, chord study. I was going, hey, if I stuck this chord in there, and if I stretched out, if I added 4 bars here, and I started thinking about a melody and a lyric. I was just playing, jazz chords. And so before you knew it, I had this tune. So I played it for the guys in the band, and they said, Rick, it's a jazz song. Like, we're a rock band. What are you doing? think it was Gil that said, you know what, it's a good enough song. It deserves to be on the album. Like it deserves to get heard. So we'll put it right at the end, like a little PS at the end of the album, because it was a song about musician being on the road. And that song is, I used it to close concerts for decades. It would be my last song. Like I'd come out, I'd do an encore, and then I'd sit down and do that one.
You brought up Young Enough to Cry. Oh my God, what a great song.
Thank you.
But yeah, I love the whole guitar, the way it went down, and very, very, very cool blues.
Thank you.
That was an original?
Yeah, Gil wrote that lyric, and I sort of came up with some ideas for the chord changes, but it was mostly his tune. And I'll tell you a little secret. When we recorded that, it was at Sounds Interchange in Toronto. The studio's no longer there. But I did that solo late at night, and I think I probably smoked a reefer. And yeah, I just dug in on that one. It was, I've always liked that tune. It's got a vibe that I like, that kind of descending minor, that like I just love that construction. Pretty cool thing to get.
Yeah, I always loved that song. I wasn't even in my mind when we started talking. When you said you might have had the reefer, I thought Leslie was going to come up again. That's fantastic. Where can everybody find the information on you and what you're doing and all your new releases or re-releases? That's
well,
Rick Emmett.
There's rickemmett.com. Yeah, rickemmett, RIKEMMETT. So that's one place. I'm sure they could, Google Roundhill Records and they're going to find something. And I think literally if they just, you go to your favorite, whatever, digital aggregator, digital retailer, iTunes. And, I would hope that people, if they're not familiar with my solo stuff, and, there's a chance that they might not have, they listen to all the old Triumph stuff, but they don't listen to my stuff. So if they want to check it out, the Spotify and Pandora, they all have this stuff now, and you can add it to your playlists, and that'd be great.
That's fantastic. Is there, I know you kept telling me to ask you questions, and I treated it more like a conversation with an old friend, except you hadn't met me before.
Yeah. Should I call you Killer all the time, or can I call you Carlo?
Carlo is actually the engineer. He's over.
Oh, is he? Okay, because the name on the screen is Carlo.
Oh, is it? Yeah, because he signed in. I'm Steve Keller, Killer Keller.
Steve. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
But do people call you Killer, or do they call you Steve?
They actually call me both. It depends.
Okay, so you're Steve. You're Killer Steve.
Yeah.
and hello to Carlo, even in the background there. Hello, Carlo.
You're getting a hello, Carlo.
Okay.
But we appreciate you. Would you mind giving us a station ID, Animal House Radio? This is Rick Emmett.
Sure. Hey, this is Rick Emmett of Triumph, and you're listening to Animal House Radio.
Fantastic. Now, Rick, before we go, is there anything you would like to tell us that I missed?
No, I mentioned the book of poetry that might be coming out, and that's a long way away. You know what? Yeah, let me tell you this. On my website, rickemmett.com, I've got 18 new songs that you can download that are just guitar and voice, and there's 6 new jazz guitar pieces, fingerstyle jazz guitar pieces. So there's actually 24 new songs on my site. Now, and I may let those run for a year or so. And then if Roundhill maybe wants to add them to their collection, they can make me an offer, and I probably won't refuse.
Yeah. I appreciate the conversation that you've had with me. I've been a fan. Now I hope we're friends.
Yeah, and, you bet.
Yeah. And you come on our show anytime when that book of poetry comes out, when you got something to promote.
Great.
We'll meet you in Pompton Lakes.
Yeah, wow. I don't know. Cam sort of gave it up, the guy that promoted them. I should say hi to Cam Mildner. Hi, Cam. Cam. Now when you send me the link for this, when it comes up, I'll make sure that I send it to him. I go, hey, Cam, I miss you. Yeah. Yeah. He decided, I mean, it's a lot of work to promote a show like that every year.
Yeah.
And, he's a real estate guy. And it's like he had a real life. He had kids and everything, lovely wife, so it's kind of like, yeah, he said, I've done my thing. And he did justice by his pal. So, yeah. Anyways, yeah,
That's
I won't see
fantastic.
you in Pompton Lakes. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, Rick. I hope to speak again.
Yeah, man.
All right. Have
All
a good
right,
night,
Steve.
and we're going to catch up when we do the poetry. All right.
You bet. Okay, man.
Fantastic. Good
Take
night.
care.